But whoop-de-doo, beta-Hydroxy, beta-Methylbutyrate is actually a metabolite of the essential amino acid leucine. So you could say that it's leucine on steroids. And when you look at the price, it's certainly leucine on steroids because HMB is mad freaking expensive. Vigorous Steve here with part 2 of the Optimized Endurance Deep Dive video series, discussing over-the-counter supplements. Yet again, I know I promised you guys in part 2 that we're going to review the performance-enhancing drugs and the medications which are known to improve stamina and overall endurance, but part 1 turned out to be over an hour in duration, so I had to split it up. The first part of part 1, the over-the-counter supplements, we discussed how to optimize testosterone levels, how to improve your overall oxygen carrying capacity of the red blood cells, and how to improve and optimize cardiac function. I cut it there. So in this part 2 of part 1 of the over-the-counter supplements, we're going to discuss how to optimize skeletal muscle function from an endurance perspective and how to optimize the removal of metabolic waste products, especially lactic acid. So all you naturals out there that don't take performance-enhancing drugs, rejoice. There's another part for you guys. But all of the enhanced individuals lament. Let me know down below in the comment section how disappointed you are that part 2 didn't include PEDs. That'll be in part 3. Just have to be a little bit more patient. Stay tuned. It will drop within a week, give or take. Now, before we get into it, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you want to ask me questions, you can do so on the weekly Vigorous Q&A. You can join the YouTube or Patreon memberships. So we have 1 to 1.5 hours to ask your questions privately. And otherwise, you can support the channel simply by voting for the upcoming deep dives, which are going to drop next. The next one will be the optimized entrepreneurial stack using various nootropics to get the job done. Let's get started. Creatine monohydrate. Yeah, the best form of creatine known to man. You don't have to go with any other form. The first version, the original version, is the best version. Can be between 2,000 milligrams to 5,000 milligrams before activity. I wouldn't go any higher than 5,000 milligrams creatine monohydrate because it does keep some fluid within the intestinal tract. And, what you can also do is supplement with, let's say, 500 to 1,500 milligrams creatine monohydrate with meals, because again, it will slowly and steadily get absorbed into skeletal muscle, and you have a creatine monohydrate buffer in, regenerating ATP synthesis, but you don't have to take everything pre-workout. I would say that the maximum dose of creatine monohydrate is about 10,000 milligrams per day. So maybe 2 servings of 5,000 milligrams before your morning workout and your afternoon or evening workout. I would consider to be the maximum tolerable dose. And again, if you notice a little bit of gastrointestinal upset, you have bloating, excessive water retention, consider taking a single dose before bed because, the bloating and the water retention that you'll experience is occurring at night. And by the next day you go to bed, you evacuate, then all your problems are resolved and the creatine monohydrate is certainly within your skeletal muscle. Now, creatine is made from several different amino acids, including glycine, arginine, and methionine in the liver, and to a lesser extent in the kidneys and the pancreas. So you do produce decent amounts of creatine by yourself, but if you want more, then the supplemental route is the way to go. And creatine has been shown to increase the activity of key enzymes involved in glycolysis, which is the process where glucose is broken down for ATP synthesis. So creatine can help with that to a certain extent. Creatine, as we all know, will improve water retention within skeletal muscle cells. Now, if you have taurine in the picture and creatine, of course, taurine will help with the regulation of, micronutrients between the intercellular and extracellular space, but the creatine actually keeps it there. So you have a volumizing effect. Now you have more nutrients within skeletal muscle, but not to the point that you get, impaired lower back pumps or shin splints. But the nitric oxide, and mineral retention that creatine potentiates is certainly beneficial. So you have more water in the cells. Allegedly, this can protect your skeletal muscle cells from injury as well. Again, when you look at the laundry list of benefits of creatine, it's so far because it's the most studied, and you do really have to cherry pick on what you want because apparently creatine can cure cancer nowadays as well. All right, creatine acts as a lactic acid buffer, which I feel that L-Citrulline Malate is certainly a lot more beneficial, but the evidence is there that during high intensity exercise, the lactic acid builds up and the creatine helps with lactic acid removal from skeletal muscle to a certain extent. Again, split up the dosages if you need to. I feel that creatine is very beneficial to improve your overall endurance, but to be fair, I feel that it's a lot more beneficial when it comes to strength exercise over endurance. Still, I know a lot of endurance runners or endurance cyclists that take creatine monohydrate religiously. That brings us to oral ATP supplementation, which I think I was also one of the first to introduce this to the fitness community. Again, MuscleTech has Peak ATP, which is one of my favorite oral ATP supplements out there. Dosages between 400 to 800 milligrams before activity. Now, even though the package says that you shouldn't exceed 400 milligrams, I'm crazy and you're probably also crazy. So 800 milligrams is something you can get away with, even though if you combine that with taurine and creatine, the vasodilation that you get from peak ATP and perhaps beetroot extract or carnitine or whatever else is in this video might be so substantial that you're terribly pumped, right? So respect peak ATP. I don't believe that extract that, what was it called? I can't even remember the name. There was some sort of extract that is supposedly increasing ATP levels. I've tried various different products, didn't do shit, right? So creatine is where it's at, and otherwise peak ATP oral supplementation to help with vasodilation and increase overall adenosine triphosphate levels within the body. Now, there's some conflicting evidence regarding the cell membrane permeability of exogenous ATP. ATP, depending on the research paper that you read, can either permeate into the cell or cannot. Now, we do know that hypertrophy causes a little bit of cell membrane damage, allowing carnitine, creatine, and perhaps ATP to permeate. What I do notice myself, besides the increased vasodilation, which comes from the conversion of ATP into AMP, which happens quite rapidly, I do notice that the overall energy levels throughout the workouts are, if I have to put a percentage on it, let's say 25% more. And the pumps that I get from it, also very, very nice. If you don't want to inject Amino Asylum Stampede or Super Shredder, then this is probably your best alternative. I would say that it works better than creatine, but in combination, creatine to help with ATP regeneration and supplementing with a little bit of oral ATP on top. Yeah, bliss. The overall endurance and performance benefits that you get out of that, really, really good. Especially during long distance sports, supplemental ATP will help quite dramatically, albeit that the active life is quite short, let's say 2 to 3 hours. So if you have a 6 to 8 hour race, you might have to dose peak ATP twice or maybe even 3 times. Again, I'll leave it entirely up to you. If you notice a lot of benefit on top of your creatine supplementation, then feel free to take 400 milligrams, 800 milligrams, or maybe even 1200 milligrams over a multitude of hours, right? 400 milligrams per time. All right, moving over to oral L-Carnitine-L-Tartrate supplementation, which I'm sure all of you guys are already familiar with. Of course, we use carnitine supplements to improve overall fatty acid oxidation by shuttling long-chain and medium-chain triglycerides into the mitochondria to improve fat loss. And this simultaneously improves stamina and performance during endurance sports or strength sports for that matter. But I know what you're going to ask. Steve, injectable carnitine is 10 times better than oral L-Carnitine-L-Tartrate or other forms of carnitine because of its poor oral bioavailability. And yes, I highly agree. I've been running injectable carnitine ever since I got my hands on it. And when you look at my physique now, that's basically 2 years on injectable carnitine, whereas previously I was running oral L-Carnitine-L-Tartrate, and I do notice a significant difference. But this video is about over-the-counter supplements, buddy. And injectable carnitine isn't exactly over-the-counter now, is it? Unless you live in, you're lucky, you live in a select few countries where injectable carnitine is actually available at the pharmacy. No questions asked. But for the rest of us who have to go through the gray area supply chain, right? It's a little bit more cumbersome. Injectable carnitine is difficult to source. Don't worry, I'll include it in part 2 of this video. So we're going to focus on oral supplementation in this video. Don't worry, don't get too excited. We'll get to it eventually. So dosages range between 1,000 milligrams to 3,000 milligrams before activity, or otherwise you supplement with 500 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams with meals, depending on how many meals you eat during the day. Keep in mind that carnitine, just like creatine and some other amino acids, require insulin to be absorbed into skeletal muscle, but creatine and carnitine can also be absorbed with intense muscular contraction. So if you do endurance sports or strength sports for that matter, then you will absorb the carnitine and the creatine regardless of insulin being present. So if you follow a ketogenic diet, which is ultimately horrible for endurance and performance, you will still absorb the supplemental carnitine as well as the supplemental creatine, but it might be better to have a slight insulin release, which you can actually get from essential amino acids or branched-chain amino acids because they contain isoleucine and leucine, which are surprisingly insulinotropic. But we'll get to that a little bit later in this video. For now, if you have carnitine with meals, you will absorb it. Meals containing a decent amount of carbohydrates, which is, again, more beneficial for endurance sports compared to a ketogenic diet. And, that way you kind of take the thinking out of it. You have 500 milligrams with meals, releasing a little bit of insulin, and ultimately your creatine stores within the mitochondria will improve, allowing for plenty of fatty acid oxidation to occur. Now, fair warning here. I know you guys are going to ask me about mildronate. Steve, what about mildronate? All right, it's getting a little bit repetitive. I see in the Vigorous Q&A. Mildronate inhibits carnitine synthesis directly in the body. Now, carnitine is made from L-lysine and L-glycine and requires vitamin C, zinc, and iron to be formed. Mildronate inhibits this process, allowing for more carbohydrate metabolism, for mitochondrial function and ATP synthesis. And this way, if you supplement with carnitine alongside of your mildronate, or cardarine, for example, which also improves fatty acid oxidation, you have to choose one of them, right? Either carnitine and cardarine or mildronate and copious amounts of carbohydrates, right? Choose one. Don't combine all of them because you're literally sending opposing signals and your mitochondria really don't know what to do. They're probably going to implode like Akira, and now the entire city has to deal with these repercussions. So don't do that. Choose either or. Carnitine can also help with lactic acid removal during intense exercise, especially endurance exercise, but not to the extent that creatine or L-Citrulline Malate or Beta-Alanine can contribute to lactic acid removal. So you might get a little bit of a benefit by shifting energy production from carbohydrates to fatty acid oxidation, but it's not going to contribute that much if you're already taking creatine, L-citrulline, and beta-alanine. It's still a great stack, though, these 4 supplements together. That's endurance for days, and it's reasonably inexpensive. So again, carnitine supplementation is a no-brainer. But again, if you're going to look into mildronate after watching part 2, just take it out. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose. Moving over to essential amino acids and branched-chain amino acids. Now, those mostly help with recovery and contribute to, basic physiological functions because essential amino acids and branched-chain amino acids, the body can't produce on its own. So you have to obtain that through the diet or supplementation. Anywhere between 5,000 to 15,000 milligrams essential amino acids before activity, or 2,000 to 5,000 milligrams branched-chain amino acids before activity, ideally in combination with creatine and carnitine to get its beneficial effects, because isoleucine and leucine seems to have some insulinotropic effects. Again, they readily convert through gluconeogenesis into glucose. So again, if you supplement with this and you take a boatload of essential amino acids and branched-chain amino acids with potentially carnitine and creatine at the same time, you get an insulin release expensively because the isoleucine and the leucine is literally turning into glucose acutely in the liver. So, you might be better off by taking these essential amino acids or branched-chain amino acids throughout the workout or directly before, so your body can actually utilize them. Still, a lot of these will be recruited for energy and not exactly as a building block. And that being said, essential amino acids and branched-chain amino acids are literally the building blocks of all of the proteins which your body is made of. So that whether those are the enzymes or the skeletal muscle or the hair or the nails, everything in between, that's all protein consisting of EAAs and BCAAs. Those are essential for muscle protein synthesis, particularly leucine, which seems to initiate the muscle protein synthesis process. So supplement with your leucine royally, albeit that most people get adequate amounts of leucine through dietary sources. If you break down your leucine intake or your BCAA intake or your essential amino acid intake, when you follow a regular bro food diet or a diet aimed for endurance with a decent amount of protein, which will actually already give you about 25 to 30 grams of leucine over the day, still, supplemental leucine in the form of BCAAs or essential amino acids might be beneficial around the workout to initiate muscle protein synthesis, start your recovery process faster. And of course, if you recover better and faster in between consecutive endurance workouts, then your endurance overall might improve to a certain extent. Is it something to look into? Yes. But how much will they contribute to the total picture when you're already taking some of the other supplements which we're discussing in this video? Probably to a negligible amount, but still, if you have to make a choice between some of the other supplements and essential amino acids or branched-chain amino acids, they certainly have their benefits, which has been proven in many scientific studies. So it's something to look into, and especially if you follow very long and in very intense endurance sports or very strenuous strength sports, then essential amino acids are pretty much a godsend because, again, they prevent muscle protein breakdown, and that's ultimately what you're after. You need to sustain your muscularity and your endurance for as long as possible for you to win the race or beat the strength competition. But I do like beta-hydroxy, beta-methylbutyrate, HMB. It used to be the craze back in the day. It has made a little bit of a resurgence. Some people swear by it, taking a very high dose, copious amounts of HMB to prevent muscle protein breakdown and initiate muscle protein synthesis. I found that it's more beneficial than leucine by itself. But whoop-de-doo, beta-hydroxy, beta-methylbutyrate is actually a metabolite of the essential amino acid leucine. So you could say that it's leucine on steroids. And when you look at the price, it's certainly leucine on steroids because HMB is mad freaking expensive. And the dosages that you need to get a beneficial effect are, let's say, 3,500 to 5,000 milligrams per day. So you would supplement with 500 milligrams with meals and then an additional 1,000 milligrams HMB before the workout and after the workout. It has similar effects as essential amino acids and branched-chain amino acids, albeit the total dose is significantly lower. You see that HMB enhances muscle protein synthesis, but mostly where it really shines is to prevent catabolism. So if you're in a chronic caloric deficit while you're dieting for a show, or you do very long endurance sports, again, at high intensity, then HMB might be able to mitigate muscle protein breakdown. In this way, you sustain your energy levels by sustaining your muscle mass longer. And in its ability to reduce exercise-induced muscle damage, HMB can also lower inflammation. Now, in the beginning of exercise, this isn't really an issue because the muscle damage and the inflammation isn't really present. But with prolonged exercise, especially during long-term endurance sports, the muscle damage and inflammation can accumulate. So HMB can mitigate this to a certain extent because systemic inflammation, especially inflammation within skeletal muscle, can hinder endurance tremendously. So you'll notice that a high dose, let's say 1,000 milligrams HMB before endurance sports, can really mitigate this to an effect. And now you notice that you can train at a higher performance for longer. And you might even need to supplement additional 1,000 milligrams of HMB somewhere in the middle of your training session. Again, similar to how you would take essential amino acids or branched-chain amino acids into your workout. So look into it, albeit, again, get your credit card ready because it's mad expensive. And the benefits that you get of HMB, if you're taking a real, actual performance-enhancing drugs, might be negligible. Performance-enhancing drugs that might actually be cheaper. All right, moving over to the extracts, and we're going to glance over these a lot quicker because they have various levels of efficacy, and otherwise we're going to sit here for another hour, and nobody has time for that. Talking about efficacy, what I would like to see from Gorilla Mind is a product called, let's call it Gorilla Sprint, with the tagline, no shin splints included, because Gorilla Sprint contains taurine. For the guys that are familiar with energy drinks, taurine apparently gives you wings. But when you're sprinting as a gorilla, shin splints will be tremendous. I mean, I remember running for the bus, back when I was living in Holland and I used to take public transportation. I would have shin splints within 2 or 3 minutes of running to the bus station. So hopefully a Gorilla Sprint can come out containing all of these extracts and efficacious dosages backed up by clinical evidence. Who knows, maybe the product will someday get made. At least it's WADA approved and very vanilla gin pop friendly. So I'll pitch it to Derek myself. Stay tuned for Gorilla Sprint if he uses that name. And then we can all sprint like a gorilla. No, not on steroids. We can all sprint like a gazelle. Do you guys remember Tony Little that used to promote the gazelle? We can take Gorilla Sprint, maximize our endurance on gazelle, running for hours and hours and hours, somehow ending up at the same place. All right, let's highlight a couple of these extracts, starting with D-Ribose, 5,000 to 10,000 milligrams before activity. Long story short, D-Ribose is set to support the regeneration of ATP by providing the necessary building blocks for its production. Now, this is pretty much the same as Cordyceps, 1,000 milligrams to 3,000 milligrams daily, split over several dosages. Doesn't have to be exactly around the workout. Cordyceps are also said to increase ATP synthesis, right, and utilize oxygen for the production of adenosine triphosphates. And cordyceps are also classified as an adaptogen, which means it might help the body adapt to stressors, including strenuous physical exertion. So might be some benefit to supplementing with cordyceps extracts. And the same can be said of Rhodiola Rosea, 200 to 600 milligrams daily, split out over several dosages, also classified as an adaptogen. And evidence suggests that Rhodiola Rosea might also contribute to ATP synthesis. And Rhodiola Rosea is said to influence the release and activity of neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. So this way, through supplemental means, you might actually improve your mood and overall energy levels and reduce the perception of fatigue. And then there's Pycnogenol Extract. Dosages range between 100 milligrams to 300 milligrams daily, split out over multiple servings. Pycnogenol might improve blood flow and microcirculation, and it's said to have very potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. So this way it can reduce muscle soreness and improve overall muscle recovery, ultimately contributing to an improved endurance during particular sports. So it's something to look into. And then we have Panax Ginseng. Dosages range between 200 to 400 milligrams daily. Ginseng is another adaptogen, so again, helps to adapt the body to certain stressors. Ginseng has also been associated with improved oxygen utilization and increased nitric oxide production, which can enhance blood flow and oxygen delivery to muscles. But ginseng we mostly take for its overall cognitive enhancing effects, including improved mental focus, alertness, and perhaps memory formation. And quercetin, another flavonoid extract with antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, might improve endurance by increasing mitochondrial biogenesis, which increases to the amount of mitochondria that the cell now contains. And it's also been shown to enhance nitric oxide production, which can improve blood flow. Dosages range between 500 to 2,000 milligrams daily. Cistanche Extract, 500 to 2,000 milligrams per day, another adaptogen, also suggested to improve oxygen utilization and oxygen carrying capacity within the body. It might have anti-fatigue properties by reducing the buildup of lactic acid within the muscles. How much does so to the extent that carnitine, creatine, L-Citrulline, or beta-alanine does? I'm not entirely sure, but again, some evidence suggests that it might help with endurance sports. Same as Apigenin, albeit that Apigenin apparently is better for sleep, which I didn't include in the sleep deep dive video, so my sincere apologies. And apparently Apigenin has some anxiolytic properties, reducing anxiety and promoting relaxation. So maybe if you take it before bed, you can reduce the onset of sleep and perhaps extend the duration of sleep. Where I think that Apigenin really shines, if you're a bundle of anxiety because you're going to do a marathon or an ultra marathon, which is going to be hours in duration, and you're surrounded by people that are going to compete with you, maybe you can take the edge off with Apigenin. And since it has been associated with cardiovascular benefits, including improved blood flow and blood vessel health, and again, it's a potent anti-inflammatory and antioxidant, maybe it has some performance-enhancing benefits in the context of endurance sports. And it brings us to the last segment of this video. Don't worry, it's almost over. We're almost there. You can almost exit. We're going to discuss how to optimize lactic acid removal. Now, we already touched on this during the creatine and carnitine segment of this video, but now we're really going to dive into it. All of the over-the-counter supplements which are really known to improve lactic acid removal from skeletal muscle, so you're never, ever, 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 ever sore ever again. Starting with L-Citrulline Malate, 6,000 milligrams to 12,000 milligrams before activity. Yes, 12,000 milligrams. If you have a pre-workout formula that contains 2,000 milligrams L-Citrulline Malate, throw it in the trash. That doesn't do anything. You need between 6,000 to 12,000 milligrams for sake. Now, we are all familiar with L-Citrulline Malate, so I'll just put it on the screen. You guys know exactly what it does. And as a quick reminder, L-citrulline converts into L-arginine in the body, which is then used to produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator that helps you relax the blood vessels, allowing for improved blood flow and oxygen delivery to the muscle and removal of metabolic waste products. L-citrulline malate has been shown to reduce the accumulation of ammonia and lactic acid during exercise, which again if you have these metabolic waste products, ammonia coming from muscle protein breakdown and lactic acid coming from carbohydrate metabolism, then L-Citrulline Malate is almost essential, crucial, mandatory if you're going to train for a lot of hours, because the longer you train, the more ammonia and lactic acid will build up. Don't exclude it from your pre-workout endurance stack, because this is basically the foundation, besides some of the other ones which I highlighted earlier on, of your optimized endurance supplementation. So why don't we take L-Arginine instead of L-Citrulline, because it converts into L-Arginine anyway. Well, L-Arginine orally at higher dosages gives you terrible gastrointestinal upset. Oh, and before I forget, L-Citrulline is an intermediate in the citric acid cycle, so it directly contributes to ATP synthesis, which again supplies all of the energy within the body. So L-Citrulline highly beneficial in this context, and malate might have some potential performance-enhancing benefits by itself, but it's never been directly compared between L-Citrulline Malate, comparing it to L-Citrulline by itself. About 1.76 grams of L-Citrulline Malate yields exactly 1 gram of pure L-Citrulline, but you'll see that most of the pre-workout formulas contain L-Citrulline Malate, so you get a percentage of that, which is what you're after, the actual L-Citrulline. Moving over to everybody's favorite, the ultimate butthole itcher, Beta-Alanine, 2,000 milligrams up to 5,000 milligrams before activity, or 500 to 1,000 milligrams with meals, which is what I prefer. Still, if you supplement with a low dose beta-alanine, you will still get butthole itches every time you take it, no matter if you buffer it with food. So if you eat 5 meals per day and you have 1,000 milligrams with each meal, butthole itch every single time. Get ready for it. You can't walk away from it. You can't wipe your ass, in an attempt to make it go away. If you eat spicy food and you have beta-alanine multiple times per day, man, that's like torture for your butthole. So don't overdo it. Beta-alanine supplementation is one of the best ways to reduce the acidity caused by lactic acid buildup during strenuous and long-term endurance sports or strength sports or hypertrophy work for that matter, right? The longer you train, the higher the intensity is. Lactic acid production will go up, and beta-alanine converting into carnosine will act as an acid buffer, ultimately sustaining and improving your performance. Again, the downside is those butthole itches, the paresthesia, the tingling effect. Very, very annoying. There's no way around it, unfortunately. So keep that in mind. Some people actually enjoy that, but I think there's much more enjoyable drugs which induce paresthesia, but I'll leave that entirely up to you. So beta-alanine, again, converts into carnosine. Carnosine is a dipeptide found in muscle tissue, acts as a pH buffer, and helps to regulate the acid-base balance in muscle tissue during strenuous and high-intensity exercise. During intense exercise, especially endurance sports, hydrogen ions accumulate within the muscle, leading to a decrease in overall pH levels, a condition known as acidosis. So again, the carnosine acts as an acid buffer in keeping pH levels within skeletal muscle sustained. By attenuating this acidosis and reducing the accumulation of the metabolic waste products associated with fatigue, beta-alanine can actually delay the onset of fatigue and prolong the exercise efforts. Beta-alanine supplementation is particularly effective in activities involving short bursts of energy, especially during sprints, for example, to win the race at the last bit of the long-distance race, or intense climbs during cycling of several endurance sports. Now, this also contributes to hypertrophy work and strength sports, right? If you need a short burst of energy, then beta-alanine prevents the lactic acid acidosis and allows you to train at a higher capacity. But beta-alanine is never as good as baking soda. I mean, who would have known that something as simple as baking soda, also known as sodium bicarbonate, can actually improve your endurance quite dramatically? And that's because sodium bicarbonate has an alkalinity, a pH of 8.4, and supplementing into the gram ranges. I mean, the effective dosages are between 2,000 and 10,000 milligrams of baking soda per day, around 60 to 90 minutes before the workout. And some guys go as high as 30 grams. Yes, 30 grams. I did this, so you don't have to. 30 grams of baking soda before the workout, or split out over the day in between meals. The alkalinity is quite high, and supplementing royally can actually raise the pH levels of your blood when they're coming down due to the acidity of the lactic acid buildup. So if you're supplementing with beta-alanine and your carnosine levels go up in skeletal muscle, removing the lactic acid from skeletal muscle into the bloodstream, there's still an acid buffer there as well. So you have an acid buffer in skeletal muscle, an acid buffer in the bloodstream. And if you take beta-alanine and sodium bicarbonate together, man, the lactic acid excretion that you get out of that, tremendous. But even if you take sodium bicarbonate by itself, I feel that it's more beneficial than beta-alanine, but good luck putting that much sodium bicarbonate into a pre-workout. Plus, if you take sodium bicarbonate orally, it goes into the stomach first. It lowers the acidity of the stomach, preventing the breakdown and absorption of all of the other things that you take at the same time. So you need to take sodium bicarbonate on an empty stomach. And even when you do that, it starts to react with the acid in your stomach, producing carbon dioxide. So when you take sodium bicarbonate, you will start to burp. It literally feels like you just had a whole can of soda. That's how much you will burp, especially when we take 10 grams up to 30 grams of sodium bicarbonate orally. So keep that in mind. That's a side effect that's meant to happen. You still need to drink a copious amounts of water to kind of flush this through and out of your intestinal tract, because if you want to reduce the lactic acid buffer within the bloodstream, and of course within skeletal muscle using beta-alanine, but you also want to improve your endurance by taking essential amino acids or Branch-Cain amino acids or HMB during the workout, then the acidity of your stomach needs to be restored by the time you start supplementing these supplements back in. So timing is a little bit difficult and narrow, I would say. I didn't notice in the beginning how bad this reduction of stomach acidity was going to be. So I put, 5 grams of baking soda into my pre-workout shake. And guess what? It didn't digest and I had to vomit halfway through. So don't do what I did again. And I also need to mention, this is very important. Sodium bicarbonate is actually 27.3% sodium. So if you take 1,000 milligrams sodium bicarbonate, you get 273 milligrams sodium, which is already 18% of the daily recommended intake for sodium for general population. Now, I know you and me are not general population, and copious amounts of sodium are not really an issue for us. Most of us supplement with sodium and supplement with potassium, magnesium, calcium to get our perfect electrolyte balance in. And again, like I mentioned earlier in the video discussing carnitine, if you want to improve your overall blood pressure because you supplement with sodium royally, then that's pretty much a given when you go the sodium bicarbonate route. And it means that if you go with the effective dose of sodium bicarbonate, let's say 10 grams, 20 grams, maybe 30 grams pre-workout, you get anywhere between 2,730 milligrams sodium, 540-60 milligrams, or even 8,000 to 190 milligrams sodium in one serving. In one serving, guys. So get your carnitine ready, get your Cialis ready, get your telmisartan ready, or anything else that you prefer to take to keep your blood pressure in range, because it will shoot up, especially at higher dosages, because that's a lot of sodium in one go. Your blood volume will increase, and even all of the over-the-counter supplements, which you just mentioned, to improve blood flow, microcirculation, and reduce blood pressure, it might not be enough. So start low, build your way up. Maybe start with 2,000 milligrams sodium bicarbonate on an empty stomach before the exercise, and then slowly build your way up 1 gram per workout until you hit that sweet spot. And now your endurance is tremendously sustained. You don't have any negative effect of lactic acid buildup and overall acidity of the bloodstream. And that way, with the beta-alanine and the sodium bicarbonate, you might hit that sweet spot, let's say 3,000 milligrams beta-alanine, which is already annoying enough to get paresthesia all day long, and maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 grams of sodium bicarbonate pre-workout, more than enough to burp a mouthful, but certainly a very good combination to keep the lactic acid side effects at bay. And then last on the list, another extract, Beetroot Extract, which has nitrites. Beetroot nitrites actually help to increase nitric oxide production, and thus, like all of the other compounds that increase nitric oxide levels within the bloodstream, widen blood vessels, improve blood flow, oxygen delivery to muscles, removal of lactic acid and other metabolic waste products, and might even contribute to mitochondrial function. The dosages range between 300 milligrams up to 2,000 milligrams before activity, because various beetroot extracts have various levels of nitrites. So you might have to start low and build your way up. I would say that 500 milligrams of net nitrites is more than sufficient to increase nitric oxide levels within the bloodstream for all of its benefits, especially if you combine this with some of the other supplements which are known to increase nitric oxide levels, which well, in this video, were aplenty. So be careful that your blood pressure doesn't drop too low. You might need copious amounts of sodium to keep it somewhat sustained by improving your overall blood volume. So make sure you go with the beetroot extracts that actually mentioned the nitrite content on the label. So you can take anywhere between 500 milligrams to 2000 milligrams beetroot extract. And thus, especially if you combine it with Carditon, your overall blood pressure and your overall blood volume, blood flow and oxygen carrying capacity and removal of metabolic waste products goes up and up. This is the last supplement I wanted to discuss. I'm sure this video is mad long, but hey, you guys voted for it. So here it is, and we're not even done yet. This is only part 1, discussing the supplements. If I forgot any of them, a supplement that you know improves endurance and overall stamina and performance during particular sports, you feel that it's the go-to GOAT of all supplements out there, please link it down below. Again, I didn't mention nicotinamide mononucleotide or nicotinamide riboside, which I do find is very beneficial. But honestly, dude, I think that everybody should be on it if you're over 30, 35 years old, because it improves sleep quality and stamina and recovery and endurance. Because, well, those are all dependent on enzymatic reactions. And if you upregulate and optimize the enzymatic reactions within the body, basically everything improves, including your libido. So if you put a supplement stack together using some of these, man, the endurance, the stamina, the performance that you have in the bedroom, legendary. Absolutely legendary. I take some of these and, well, I won't bore you with the details, but yeah, I think I'm doing pretty good using some of these supplements. Okay, leave it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. The next endurance deep dive video discussing the performance enhancing drugs will drop in about a week or so. I still have to prepare for it, but again, you know, I want to make sure that it's high quality for you guys, because I'm sure most of you guys are looking forward to the PD side of optimizing your endurance. For now, we're out of time. Vigorous crew, you guys know what to do. A front double bicep full with nitric oxides, improved blood flow, and all that good stuff for you guys. Stay tuned for part 2. Subscribe now if you're not subscribed yet. Look at all of the links down below if you want a discount on these particular supplements. Right? Shopping online, saving yourself some money in the process, and giving me a kickback. That's highly appreciated. And, well, I guess we'll see you in the next one, dropping soon.